Welcome to Outrage Overload, a science podcast about outrage and lowering the temperature. This is a bonus episode catching up with the Dignity Index.
We came into the scoring other people, and we quickly saw that this was something, it was a mirror, and we call it the mirror effect. We started to think, oh my gosh, I sound like that.
That's Tami Pyfer, speaking about the Dignity Index. We met Tami last year when we introduced the Dignity Index. So I thought it would be good to catch up and see about progress with this organization and with the index. Before we dive in, though, let's go over what the index is. So the Dignity Index is a scale from 1 to 8 for rating speech. It's not for rating people, it's for rating the language they use.
The social impact initiative Unite designed a 1 to 8 scale to measure speech for dignity or contempt. The lower the number, the more contemptuous and divisive the language.
When we were in the early stages of testing the Dignity Index, a Republican woman from rural Utah said, "We want to be able to stand up for what we believe in without getting attacked and without attacking." And that's a very inspiring mission and a very good test for us, because if the Dignity Index is going to be helpful for people, it has to be clear to everyone that the index is compatible with saying what you believe in, standing up for justice, and holding people accountable. Of course, we fully believe that it is, but sometimes people tell us that they just have to speak with contempt when people do things that they believe are wrong. That if they speak with contempt, they can keep people in line. And if they don't speak with contempt, they're just letting people get away with things. Well, we disagree. We believe that challenging people without contempt works better because we avoid language that makes everyone angry, and we focus attention on the issue, not the individual. So I just want to ask two questions. Question one is, which do you agree with more? Treating people with contempt will encourage them to change their behavior and bring about the best in them? Or treating people with contempt will make them double down on what they're doing and have contempt for you? Second question, when we use contempt, do we use it because it's effective in getting the change we want? Or do we use contempt because it makes us feel better in the moment? As we see it, treating others with dignity is a patriotic duty. There's no America without democracy. There's no democracy without healthy debate. And there's no healthy debate without dignity.
And that's what we're going to talk about on this episode of the Outrage Overload podcast. I'm your host, David Beckmeyer, and this episode is part of our Success Stories series where we catch up with those trying to make a difference. Today, we're hearing from Tami Pyfer, director of Unite. I know you're busy, so I really appreciate you making time again to chat. So I really do appreciate that.
Of course. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I really always want to catch up with what's going on with your organization. But yeah, so, the main reason I wanted to catch up is I'm sort of, we've been doing this a while now, and I've talked to a lot of different, scientists, researchers, but also practitioners in sort of this bridge building space and related. And so I think it's enough now to start catching up with folks and see, are we making a difference? And maybe we can find some success stories. I think, the audience, it's really easy to fall into pessimism and and feel like you can't make much of a difference or can't make a dent in this problem. And then you sort of fall into apathy and you say, well, if I can't do anything, I'm not going to do anything. So I really try to keep encouraging folks to sort of be that one match, to be the one person, and we can all, if enough of us do it, sort of they can have the cascade effect, and someday that it'll set things afire.
Yep.
So,
okay. I think this work does go slower than people would like it to. It goes a lot slower than I would like it to, right? You kind of catch fire yourself. It's like, oh, this needs to happen. These are great ideas. And then you think maybe by fall, it's going to turn around, but it's taken us a long time to get to where we are deep in this toxic polarization. It's going to take some time to get out, but are we making a difference? Yes, I believe so. And a lot of people are kind of breaking down these groups into 2, sometimes 3 categories. You've got the bridge building work, and then you've got the democracy reform. Those are kind of the 2 main ones. And you've got depolarization. And so those are some of the labels being applied to the different groups. And some do fit more neatly into democracy reform. People that are trying to work on legislation to do ranked choice voting, for example, or open primaries. That's very different than some of the Listen First coalition members, where the living room conversations or the Braver Angel debates. One of the things related to language, and I'm glad you bring this up, that we've been looking at is that we've been trying to be very intentional with the language that we use for our project. And we want people to start paying attention to dignity and contempt, because that's what is describing our scale, the scale that goes from, the bottom end, which is contempt, to the top end, which is dignity. And when you start using that language often, we want to kind of popularize the use of dignity versus respect or civility, because we think dignity is different. And the more that we can use that language, even though sometimes we get pushback and people will say, nobody knows what dignity is. You should talk about respect. And we'll say, well, they don't know what it is yet, but they will. And it is different than respect. Civility also, it has kind of it's in the same family of terms, but when you talk about civility, we think that's such a low bar. So every chance we get, despite the pushback, we're going to talk about dignity. And then when people talk about hate speech or, polarization, those type of things, we want to label what is happening as contempt, because that's what it is. We believe that, you and I have talked about this before, our differences aren't what's causing the problems. We have a lot of differences as a country. I think I just was reading a quote from Arthur Brooks. He said something like, disagreement is America's secret sauce, right? This is good, but it's how we disagree. And it's when we go into treating others with contempt, that's where our problems begin. So we want people to pay attention to the language of contempt, to the label contempt, what that looks like, what the language looks like when we use. We kind of have a shorthand of contempt means I see myself above you, and dignity means I see myself in you. And so when we talk about language, what are we calling, this work that we're all doing? I think the language matters. And on our part, we're hoping to popularize this language of dignity versus contempt.
One thing that happened from the last one bit of feedback I got from our last episode was, some people were sort of saying, I still don't know what the dignity index is.
Yeah.
And particularly maybe how I can use it.
Right.
And so I don't know if you feel like going through that again. In practice, we would maybe take a bit of text or speech or something, whether it's a paragraph or a few sentences, and it's something we wrote or somebody else, and then we'd sort of go down that list and try to say, oh, do I see this in it? Do I see that? And we'd sort of do our best to rate it ourselves in that scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got a scoring guide that is on our website under resources that we are updating right now, that people can go and look at. They can do it yourself. We are in the middle of some training videos, some online training modules, so that people can get in, look at it, just practice. We will be launching in the next maybe month, maybe less than a month, some weekly challenges nationally. We're going national with the index, to where we will post a few passages and say, give it a try, kind of like your Wordle of the day, or what is it now, connections, whatever it is that I'm terrible at, and give Americans the chance to go into, our platform and score it. See how you scored against the professionals. We will start scoring political speech and public speech, probably the beginning of February. So we'll score passages and we'll give you a chance to do it yourself. We'll have scoring guides available. What we have found is the power of this index is that when someone goes through, again, this brief training and they start scoring, they see things differently. They say things differently. When they get that next fundraising email that says, quite literally, my fundraising emails that I get say this, they say, those people are evil and they're going to ruin our country if we let them, almost verbatim. So when they see that, they'll say, I just scored that as a 2. I am going to take myself off this mailing list. I am not going to donate to that candidate. I am not going to be part of that system that is rewarding contempt, because contempt is hurting the country. That's what we hope to be seeing over the next 12 months.
Yeah, and I know for me personally, and other people I've introduced the index to, and that kind of bought into it. It changes you as much as anything else, and it really you start to recognize this kind of language a lot more often.
Yeah.
In that particular case, though, like I get those emails too, and I'm like, okay, I can't. What else? Like, how else can we make that? Like, start to make that more of a something the candidates know people will be they'll be losing support.
Yeah, well, we're trying to hit this on several different levels. So when we did the pilot here in Utah, we're going to do the same thing nationally. As we're scoring politicians. We're going to let them know that we're scoring them. We're going to send them a copy of the Dignity Index. Just FYI, we might seem as a very small, nothing organization right now, but as we start to build our group, our movement, and start to have more and more people sign on, we've got, several thousand people have signed on to our website, and we start to send them information. As we start to build the grassroots of this, it's going to be hard for politicians or other public officials or public, famous, any kind of famous person that has a microphone, right? It's going to be hard for them to ignore the fact that they start getting emails saying, yeah, take me off your mailing list. There was a really great post that I saw on social media right as we, in January, after we finished our pilot, someone said, they had read about the Dignity Index, and she said, I just emailed someone an organization whose mission I support, but I told them I didn't care for the language they were using to demonize their opponents, and I wasn't going to donate until they changed. Something to that effect. Imagine if 1,000 people did that to someone. I was reading something the other day about how many emails does it take for a senator or a congressman to start paying attention. And that number's lower than you think. You get 100, 150, 200 emails about the same topic from one of your actual constituents. They start to notice. Think if we had thousands of those emails coming in saying, yeah, I like your stance on some of these things, but I am not going to donate to you. Look at your last fundraising email scored between a 2 and a 3. Sometimes you use one language. I'm done with that. It's hurting the country. You cannot do any good as an elected official if you talk about your opponents that way, if you demonize other Americans that way. You are not moving the dial, and I cannot support you. So we think that some of that grassroots effort will pay off. We're also working at the grass tops level with the governors. We're working with Governor Spencer Cox here in Utah with his Disagree Better campaign. And we're on their website. We've been involved in the launch of their Disagree Better. It's on their website. It's a great interview between Tim Shriver, our CEO, and Governor Cox, and Yuval Levin and Monica Guzman from Braver Angels. Excellent presentation. We're connecting with numerous governors about bringing the Dignity Index to their state from their office. So it's not the grassroots that would be bringing it or starting it, but it would be the governors themselves having their cabinet members take the pledge, having them, engage in some of these dignified debates or conversations where they recognized where maybe one of their initiatives was not fully embracing these principles of dignity and made a change. We're really big on acknowledging our mistakes. We're really big, which I do like all the time, every week. I'm going, man, I blew it there, but I can do better. And that's part of the growth process. So we're looking at grass tops, we're looking at grassroots. In media and advertising, money is really the game, and people have they got to decide that I can live without that particular news channel. I could live without this social media thread. I could live without. I'm no longer going to provide the clicks that they need to be to be successful, and I'm taking myself because of the contempt. Even better if they let them know why they're leaving. I think we'll start to see a little bit of enthusiasm around that this year. Again, it takes a long time to make a big change, but a lot of people making a little change can move mountains.
Exactly. So I know I'm still a bit. We talked about this the last time we spoke. I'm still sort of amazed sometimes the amount of sort of pushback or resistance there are sometimes to something as simple as this, right? Or what seems like it should be nonpartisan, this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm sort of amazed by that. But I want to really point out something here that I think is something we should clarify, because, and I don't think you'll disagree with this, but some people have sort of tried to frame this as, well, it's both sidesism, because I have a red line, here or there or whatever that red line is, and there's no sort of negotiation with that red line, and that's a piece of it. And I think one thing I want to say, I mean, you can still have a red line and don't necessarily have to use contempt, but you still may not. I think I want to point out at least that we're not really, and again, it kind of comes back to disagree better. We're not always saying you're going to find compromise, right? And we're not always, some issues, maybe there isn't compromise. Like
sometimes you will never find compromise. Absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like nothing about the index or the things you're proposing are telling you have to give up some position that you consider a red line. And I think we see that kind of language used. And I think that's one area where I think we can be better about that, and remember that we can simultaneously continue to disagree with the person about this thing and have conversations about these other 7 things.
Yeah. And it's not just that I think it goes even beyond. It's like, I disagree with you on this, so I disagree with you on everything. It's almost to the point where I disagree with you on this, so you're an evil person.
Right.
Therefore, how could I possibly agree with you on anything else? Because you're an evil person. I'm not even going to talk to you. I think that's kind of the extreme that we've gotten to. And I love the fact that you're bringing this out. We're not here to get everybody in a circle and sing Kumbaya and change your mind on every issue and say, great, well, we'll all just give in, because, that's what you want us to do. People have criticized, in the beginning, even the title of our nonprofit's name is Unite. They'll say, you just want us to unite with the Democrats and give in. You just want us to unite and give in to the Republicans. And no. We want to unite around this principle that everyone deserves dignity. And there are examples after examples of people that don't agree. They disagree passionately, but they still treat the other person with dignity. I mean, it used to happen in politics years ago, a lot more than it happens. It happens rarely now, but just to get in and have a great debate about something and leave the table still disagreeing. Even if you don't come up with a compromise, if you don't close that door on the humanity of the other person, if you can leave that door open, then it sets the stage for you. Your mind's open a little bit to say, okay, we don't agree and we can't compromise in this. Let's get creative. Donna Hicks, who we based a lot of our work on, who did a lot of the research on dignity as an international conflict resolution specialist, she used to say, it's not about finding common ground, it's about finding higher ground. And so when our minds are open, it's like, this compromise, it's not working out. Let's step back and let's think about something we've never even thought of before. And that's where the level 7, when I said, it's maybe admitting that we were wrong, or maybe having the humility to say, maybe I don't understand your side like I thought I did. And having discussions at that level 7 of disagreement opens the door to at least being able to to creatively solve our problems. One of the lines, the hashtags on our dignity index is ease division, prevent violence, and solve problems. And to me, I see this as a huge problem-solving tool, because when I call you names, when I hold you in contempt, when I think you're evil, when I think I'm better than you, zero problem-solving happens. Think about it. If you're an elected official and that's how you think about the other side, guess who doesn't want to run a bill with you? Guess who doesn't want to work on legislation with you? So at the very minimum, if we can get on the dignity side of the scale to start working on problem solving. But back to your original point, yeah, it's not about agreeing with everybody all the time. To Governor Cox's issue, it's about disagreeing better. And another pushback, I think you've gotten this too, it's also not about shutting the other side up, but you just want to shut us up. You just want to shut down free speech. We have learned and seen this play out numerous times that contempt shuts down free speech. That's what shuts down free speech. Dignity and treating the other side with dignity lets people give their opinion in an environment where they know they'll be listened to. They won't be shouted down. They won't be called names and, that they're evil and that they're ruining the country. Dignity opens these channels to free speech. We feel like contempt shuts down free speech. And let me just, I'm sorry, I'm going on. I get really excited about it, but there's other things that came up during our pilot of this. There was one passage in particular. I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to necessarily identify the politician, but the criticism, the passage was they're ruining the country, they're doing this and they did this and they hate America and, they're ruining the country. And someone had messaged us and said, but what if I think they really are ruining the country? And I'm going, I agree. What if I think they're ruining the country too? How do I challenge and hold someone accountable, but do it without contempt? And there's a really great, 2 or 3 minute video on our YouTube channel, which is our YouTube channel is The Call to Unite. But Tom Roschert, who's the lead architect of the Dignity Index, walks you through what does that look like to hold someone accountable without contempt. And he said, basically, you stick to facts, right? Your decisions that this person, that maybe it's a politician made, the action they took, the outcome of that action, and what that outcome has, what that's caused in society or in your community. And you can do that. Say, you did as a senator, you did this. And the facts are clear. It's been documented. You did this. You said this. This was the outcome of your actions. This is what happened after you said these things. And this is what it's done, in my opinion, for democracy. This is why I think I'm a better candidate. This is something I won't do when I get into office. But I don't say don't evil, you're ruining the country, you hate America. I say, this is what you did. And this is what happened because of what you did. And this is why I don't think that's a good decision. This is how I would act or behave differently. So there is a way to do that. It takes practice. It really takes practice to not immediately go to you're an evil person, you're trying to ruin the country.
Yeah, and even if you do that, it doesn't mean it's going to work.
No, you're right. Exactly. Because the other criticism we get is you're just a softie. You're just a wimp. You don't want to, you're not going to win any arguments that way. And you're maybe not going to win arguments, but you're not going to win hearts and minds the other way. Yeah, right. Try to persuade someone to your point of view by calling them evil. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, and talking about how contempt is what stifles speech. I mean, this is what you see in social media, right? In particular, I think you see it in other forums as well, but social media really highlights it because, the only voices in there are the ones that are ready for that fight, that kind of a fight, where we're going to call each other names. And everybody else who may have a reasoned perspective in there is sort of just opted out. I don't need this. I'm not going to do this.
Yep. And you've seen this, David. I know you've seen this, that there's a certain addictive quality to contempt. And this is, again, in Arthur Brooks' work, which we also has informed our work. He talks about the outrage industrial complex and how we are addicted to contempt, that high that we get, that energy that we get from the outrage. And so to walk away from that It takes some doing for a lot of people. And I think you've also seen, just as you've just illustrated, that it's the extremes on both sides that are the ones fighting in social media. And it's that middle exhausted majority, which is actually growing. They're the ones opting out. And so you lose any of the reasonable voices or the people that actually want to listen to the other side. The other ones are in it for the high that they get.
Yeah, and it's almost like there's disincentives for showing you do want to hear the other person's perspective in some way and don't understand it.
Huge disincentives, right?
And and I always ask people, well, you think you're pretty reasonable, right? Don't you think there are people on the other side that are reasonable too? There are. I'm telling you right now, there are. They're not all. Yeah, that person you're pointing out is sort of crazy, and they get a little wild, and they're maybe. But are they really representative of everybody in that group? They're not.
Right. And I try to get people to think of someone that they know. Is there any Democrat that you know? Is there one Republican that you know? It's like, oh yeah, well, my daughter-in-law or, my niece. And it's like, oh, how do you get along with? Oh yeah, she's great. It's the rest of it. But when you start to humanize it a little bit and get them to think of someone they know. And so if that doesn't work, I get them to think of someone I know. It's like, let me tell you about my 5 kids from 5 political parties. Guess what? They're good people. And when you demonize them, that particular party, you're demonizing one of my kids. And I don't like that very much.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so it's so much easier to go the other way. And so it's that step back from it and go, wait, maybe not everyone is like that or that it exhibits that behavior or whatever. And so, yeah, it's so hard to do, but it's something I think the Dignity Index has helped me with a lot to sort of do that more and like I said before, that perception gap is one of the places where it seems like we can get the most movement, kind of moves the needle the most if we can lower that perception gap. And like I said, you still have your red line issues. I get it. That's fine. No one's telling you to give up your red line issues.
Right.
Right. We're not asking you to sort of change your morals or whatever, right?
Yeah. 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 You can disagree passionately without people being evil and without hating people. You can have these sore spots that you wish that you could get over and you don't, but you can set it aside and try to work on other issues. And I think when you do that, and again, kind of open your mind to the fact that they're not evil, they just think differently than you. I think that's when that higher ground and those higher solutions can start to filter in, sometimes even subconsciously, because we've changed the way we think about those other people.
Yeah, and if we can do this at some scale, where these incentives start to change, and that folks that exhibit the sort of bad behavior pay a penalty for it instead of get rewarded for it, and the folks that sort of have opted out, or people are now getting accused of being a softie or whatever, get some positive incentive, consequences for that. So I think it can happen. I know a lot of the scientists I talk to are not optimistic about that at all.
It's tough. I have to work really hard to be optimistic every day. It's a struggle. And this is going to be a very intense year. I don't think we're going in here with any, with our eyes wide open. It's going to be a difficult year. And I'm just the best I can do is my part and work my tail off on our project and try and get more people on my mailing list so I can support them, so that they can support their friends, so that they can email their congressman or whoever it might be, their candidate, and say, you know what? I don't operate like this anymore. I know that's how you won last time, but me and my neighborhood, we've decided to go for, the people that we think are going to solve the problems the best. And we can make a difference. Yeah,
I think so too. Well, Tami, I really appreciate you making the time to come on, and I definitely keep us updated about when any of those new tools come out. We will have all those links. I'll follow up with you to get all those links and make sure they're in the show notes. And feel free to come on anytime.
Okay, thanks so much. You have a great rest of your week, and good luck with everything.
Same to you. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That is it for this episode of the Outrage Overload podcast. For links to everything we talked about on this episode, go to outrageoverload.net. Our focus for 2024 is to make the best show possible, to add the most value to you, our listeners. And the best way we can keep improving on that is to hear from you. What do you like to see? What do you want to see? What would make this show more valuable for you? You can give us that feedback at outrageoverload@gmail.com. Or if you're worried about hurting my feelings, you can go directly to outrageoverload.net/survey and give those comments anonymously. So thanks again for listening, and look for a new episode in a couple of weeks.